All right. So I'm just going to go through how TinkerCAD circuits works and how we can simulate uh, Arduino breadboard projects on this particular program. So once you get into TinkerCAD, your sort of dashboard is going to look like this. You can see my name over here, Mr. Nightingale. And you're going to want to navigate to your classes. And you're going to want to join this class. I will have emailed you a particular code to get in. Then you're going to want to go to circuits, and we're going to create a new circuit here. And it's going to correlate with the lessons that I've posted on Teams. So we have a setting up lesson on how to set up Arduino program on your computer. And then we also have lesson 1 on there as well. Lesson 1 is just sort of a basics of Arduino and just sort of how to get started with it. So here I've opened up the circuits little interface here, and on my right hand side I got a bunch of different components that I can use, and you'll notice that it's components basics. So I am going to change that to Arduino. That's going to bring up a bunch of helpful Arduino related components. So I am going to drag this in, or rather just click on it. And it brings in an Arduino as well as a breadboard for me with already a red wire coming out from pin, my 5-volt pin, if I zoom in here, as well as black wire coming from my ground pin. And those are going to connect to the positive of my positive rail on my breadboard, and the negative. The black wire is going to go to the negative of my negative rail on my breadboard. So that's exactly what we're going to want for this particular project if you read through it. And so the next thing I want to do is I want to start bringing in and hooking up my LED and resistor to my breadboard. So once I plug in my Arduino, I'm going to have 5 volts going to the positive rail and 0 going to my negative rail here. That's going to be referred to as the ground. Now I want to choose a resistor. So if I click on basic here, I'm going to grab a resistor and I'm going to put it on my board much like it has on the example. So the first example is just hooking up a resistor, which is going to connect to the positive rail and to my breadboard. So I'm just going to click it into place there. I'm going to grab and I'm going to give it a value. So we're going to value this one. By default, it comes in as 1 kilo ohm, but we're going to change that to 220 ohms. Make sure we got to change the prefix to just ohms. And the name, it doesn't really matter. We can call that resistor 1. But that's more for when we start getting more complex circuits. Now we got our LED, we're going to drag that in as well. And because you'll see here that I got a bendy leg and a straight leg. The bendy leg indicates that it's a longer leg, so that's going to be my positive. I can change the color if I want. Let's go to green. Let's go blue. Yes. Okay. Now I'm just going to simply drag the positive over so it connects to my resistor here. So you'll see if I hover over this row here, you can see that this entire row, much like we did in real life, in the classroom, is all connected. So the last bit of business is to take a wire and connect it, the other leg, the cathode, which is the negative leg, to the negative rail. So we're going to connect it right there. We're going to change the color immediately. I think we can, maybe we got to change it up here, double click. Oh, here's where we change it. So we're going to change it to black because it's connected to the negative. Okay, so we've essentially hooked this up. So now, because if we trace the current's going to come 5 volts through this rail. Only place it's got to go is through this resistor. It's going to go through the resistor, through the anode or the positive leg of the LED, up through the LED, turning it on, and back through this wire to the negative, back to Arduino, back to ground. So we provided it a circuit, a full loop. So now to turn this on, we just gotta press on the, I think we gotta click on the, oh no, we gotta go to start simulation over here, which is gonna plug this simulated Arduino in, and you can see that our light has come on. Okay, perfect. So that's the point of this is just to show that when you plug a USB, when you plug your Arduino into a USB, it provides the Arduino with 5 volts and acts as sort of a power supply. So it's going to provide 5 DC volts, which we can then connect to a breadboard and start hooking up LEDs. The reason we got this resistor in, just for review, is to limit the current going through the LED. If we just hooked it up to straight up 5 volts, it would burn out the LED. So we need that resistor in there to take up some of the voltage and current. Okay, so we're gonna move on to the next part of this project, project 1. So we're gonna stop the simulation. And now we're gonna add in a push button. So we're gonna drag this push button in here. We'll just call it 1. That's totally fine. And the push button is gonna be hooked up like so. So we're gonna go from the positive rail from our positive rail to a resistor up into the push button. And the push button doesn't allow current to go through it unless this button is pressed here. So current's going to go up here. If the push button is pressed, it's going to go through and then out this pin here. So with that said, all we got to do is hook up our LED now to, so it's connected in the same row as that pin there. And then we got to rearrange a few things here. So we'll stick with what it has in the drawing here. So the positive is going to be connected to the resistor, which is going to go into the push button, and then it's going to go to the positive side of the LED, and then from the cathode or the negative side of the LED back to the negative rail. So we need to connect that with this wire here. If we just drag that over there, we've hooked up the circuit. So if we trace it, current's going to go up through the resistor. It's got nowhere to go. If we push the push button, it can then go through the anode of the LED, and then through the LED, through the cathode, back to the negative wire. So let's simulate that. This time we're gonna simulate it, and if we bring our cursor over the push button and click, that's gonna hold down the push button, and you can see that the light then goes on. Okay, the next step is hooking up 2 push buttons in series. So again, follow along in the lesson in our textbook, but basically we're just going to add another push button in series. So let's place our push button here. We're gonna move our LED over here. So now it's connected to the positive and it's gonna go up through this resistor here. We're now gonna connect the two push buttons. So the current, once it goes through the resistor, if that push button is pressed, it can go through this leg. We're gonna bring in a wire. Yeah, this here to here. We're gonna make it orange. So now the circuit's gonna go through this resistor, through this push button once it's pressed, through this wire, through this push button if it's pressed as well, to the LED and out through this wire. So this is called a series circuit, or having a circuit with two push buttons in series. So let's start the simulation here. And now if I push this, nothing's gonna happen because I actually gotta push both of them at the same time. And I'm not sure if there's a way to do this in the simulation. Let's see, if I right click here, can I hold it? I'm pretty sure there is a way to do it. If I double click, no. But this just goes to show you that both these buttons have to actually be pressed for the LED to go on. And if you trace the current going through this circuit, you'll be able to see that. So that's a series circuit. And now finally we're gonna hook up two LEDs, or two push buttons in parallel connected to an LED. So we're gonna leave those push buttons as is, but we gotta rearrange our circuit a little bit here. So if we stop the simulation and then we bring over this wire, we're gonna drag it up over here. Let's see here. We're gonna move just for clarity's sake, we're gonna move that LED over to there. I'm gonna grab another wire, make this one yellow. And then we're gonna hook up this side to here. And then this wire over here. And then we're gonna drag, whoops, escape out of that. If we highlight that, we can drag wire over here, wire over there. Okay, so now I hope we got two push buttons here in parallel. So if we start the simulation here, this time when we push the push button, this push button, the light's going to turn on. And hopefully you may recognize that if we push this push button, the light's going to go on as well. So this is called two push buttons in parallel. And if you take a look at the textbook, you can see the schematic for this circuit. And you'll see that both of these push buttons actually provide a separate pathway for the current to get to the LED. So if we trace it, current's going to go through the positive, through this resistor. And now it can also go over to this push button as well without this push button being pressed. So it bypasses that push button. But a push button does still need to be pressed. So if this push button is pressed here, it's actually then going to go through this yellow wire, which connects to this yellow wire, and then through the anode of the LED and out through the cathode to the negative rail back to the Arduino. If this one is pressed, well, you can see that current can go through this resistor. It can bypass that switch, go through the orange wire. Because this is pressed, it's going to go through this push button and then to this yellow line here, through the anode, back through the cathode, and turn on the LEDs. So that push button is going to turn on, and that push button is going to turn on. So that's a little introduction to both the Arduino textbook that we're going to be going through, as well as how to use TinkerCAD circuit simulation program. So hopefully that's helpful, and hopefully that gives you a little guidance on where we're going in this class and how we can work on this stuff, even if we don't have a physical breadboard or Arduino or components. So if you dare, you can start working through project number 2 as well, which is actually going to involve coding. So if you want to put code into the Arduino, it's going to be on this button here. We can use block coding, but there is also text. So text is going to simulate C++ coding, which is what we're going to be using in to code our physical Arduino. So the text book goes through the basics of coding, and you can just kind of follow along, entering the code and read up what each line of that code does. Okay, hope that helps, and we'll see you in class. Okay, bye.